Hello and welcome to the East Lampeter Township public meeting. All participants are now informed that this meeting is being recorded. Due to the COVID-19 virus and Governor Wolf's orders limiting indoor gatherings, in-person attendance for this meeting is being limited to a maximum of 25 people who will be observing social distancing. Additionally, based upon the order of the Secretary of Health regarding face coverings, all participants in the public meeting room are required to wear a face covering unless they fit into one of the order's exceptions. When speaking, while maintaining social distance, participants may remove their face covering. Therefore, this meeting is also being offered virtually utilizing Zoom, which is a cloud-based platform for remote video and audio conferencing. The Zoom application is free to the public. The general public is therefore able to join the meeting by connection through the internet or by calling in by phone. The public is also able to observe the meeting on the township's YouTube channel. The township is expecting to utilize this vehicle for all future public meetings during and after the COVID-19 crisis. Please continue to check the township website calendar for any updates related to these public meetings. Agendas for these public meetings will also be available on the township's website and will be posted on the front of the township building. The township will also be recording the meeting and making it available for viewing via the township website and YouTube channel. While every effort will be made to ensure the live streaming and website are working, East Lampeter Township takes no responsibility for and cannot be held liable for the unavailability of live streaming in part or in full due to technical issues beyond its control. Live streams and recordings of all meetings remain the property of East Lampeter Township and are protected by copyright. Access to live streams and recordings of meetings is provided for personal and non-commercial use. Video, images, and audio must not be altered, reproduced, or republished without permission of East Lampeter Township. It is suggested that all participants on Zoom mute their microphone during the meeting until they wish to speak, make a motion, or vote. All votes will be taken by roll call so that they can be properly recorded. In order to accommodate public comments at this meeting, the township will be accepting public comments in writing or via email. Instructions for the submission of public comments are available on the township website. All those providing public comments will be required to provide their name and address in order for their comments to be read into the record. Inappropriate comments will not be read into the record. Please be reminded that this meeting is being video and audio recorded and will be posted to the township's YouTube channel for viewing. The meeting will now proceed with the chairman calling the meeting to order and identifying all other members present in the meeting room and those joining the meeting via Zoom. The chairman will then confirm those members joining by Zoom can be heard.
Okay, the meeting is called to order. This is Corey Meyer. Joining me in the room is Supervisor Dave Buckwalter. On the phone, on the Zoom, we have Glenn Eberly, Supervisor Glenn Eberly. Glenn, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great. And Supervisor Ethan Demi?
I can hear you.
Great. And you could hear the announcement as well, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Excellent. Great. Sounds good. Okay, we'll continue with the meeting with the flag. Next on the agenda, we have public comment for non-agenda items only. Any public comment for non-agenda items? Okay. Anything from the public on Zoom?
No, we don't have anything.
Okay, we'll move on. We have 3 items listed on the consent agenda, but we actually have 2 additional to add, and I'll go through those after the first 3. The first one is approval of the minutes of the Monday, December 7th, 2020 regular meeting. B, we have approval to pay invoices from all funds. It's a total of $160,660.57. There are 2 items of note for that significant amount. So we have $50,799.85 to CDW Government Incorporated for a storage area network, or a SAN, and related items for the storage of criminal justice information, replacing existing SAN, which is included in the 2020 budget. And then $5,000 to Signal Control Products Incorporated for adaptive traffic signal system for Lincoln Highway East, and that is our final payment for that system. C on the agenda, we have reduction of financial security for the Avid Hotel, and that is a recommended reduction of $345,578.53, leaving a remaining balance of $65,825.27, which includes a 10% contingency. And then the two items I mentioned, they are both also reductions of the escrow account. And the first one is for the Dutch Wonderland parking lot expansion. And that recommended reduction amount is $223,201.18, leaving a remaining balance of $102,108.31. And then E is also an escrow reduction request for stormwater management, also similar property next door to the Dutch Wonderland Hotel, 2246 Lincoln Highway. And that's for a full reduction. So it's $20,460 is the recommended amount, which leaves a remaining balance of $0. So that's a full release. So those are the 5 items for the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Motion made by Dave,
Second.
second by Glenn. Thank you. Any comments from the board? Any comments from the public? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Glenn?
Aye.
Ethan?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
And chair is aye. Motion passes for the consent agenda. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, we have old business. We have utility billing relief in response to COVID-19 impacts. Hutch, do you want to give us some background on that? We can then have a discussion.
Sure. Following up on your last meeting on December 7, when the board was asked to provide some consideration of relief to businesses that have been negatively impacted, I went back and reviewed the memo that I had prepared back in the summer, actually back in August, for the board, when the board ultimately took action in September to waive all penalty and interest charges on the second quarter sanitary sewer billing through the end of the year. So I revisited that and looking at those numbers, and that had talked about the amount of flow in the system compared to prior years, and the different uses that and the method of how we charge for that service. Also talked about the revenues that we anticipated, the expenditure items, and what items are typically affected by the amount of flow in the system, and what items don't have any reflection or relationship to the amount of flow in the system. And so after reviewing that and going over the discussion that the board had, I gave some thought as to, what actions could the board take now or consider now to address this ongoing concern. And candidly, I didn't come up with a whole lot. I do think the board could extend the waiver of penalties and interest on the charges for the second quarter and the third quarter, if you'd like, and could consider that in future quarters as the pandemic continues or wanes or whatever happens in the business world. The memo, the extension could be considered again each quarter as you wish.
Yep.
The other thing that was talked about during the meeting and gave some thought to was whether or not some credit could be given to the sewer system customers to, recognize that, everybody's been impacted in some way. And so we did go and investigate our billing system, and we could do that. I do feel that would have to be applied to all of the accounts equally. So if you're going to do it on a percentage basis, perhaps you could apply a 10% or some other percent credit to each of the accounts in the system and provide some relief in that way. Of course, a combination of those two things could also be done.
Yep.
The normal billing cycle is, quarterly cycle. Our next billing would go out. We're typically printing the bills at the end of this month. They go out as close to January 1st as possible. We did learn that there would be some programming that would be required to do the credit type of arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
And so that could cause a delay
Mm-hmm.
in the timing of the usual timing of the billing. The only other thought that occurred to me, and quite honestly, I don't think it's a great idea, but the board, this is the meeting when the board adopts the budget,
Right.
and also adopts the resolution setting the tax rate. So some relief could be given in that way. That, of course, would apply to all the property owners.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't necessarily help nonprofits who
Right.
are on the sanitary sewer system. So
Yep.
there are positives and negatives there.
Right. Okay. Any other comments, Hutch?
No, I think that pretty well sums up
Yeah.
my efforts in that regard.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for bringing back the August 14th letter and then updating it with these options. So essentially, we waived charges for second quarter fees, penalties up until December 31st. We of course can extend that through another quarter. We could extend it longer, but I think what you're suggesting is, take these decisions one step at a time. We can always come back and extend it more. But, things could change quickly. We hope they will. The business environment could change hopefully quickly. And we don't want to make a 1-year decision when we can make decisions on a quarterly basis. Comments from the board? Ethan or Glenn first?
Go ahead, Ethan.
Yeah, just to comment, I think, we are limited, as I talked about last time, with the budget, but since we do have a healthy fund right now in our sewer fund, from a business standpoint, having some ability to budget is very helpful. So I know we can do this on a quarter by quarter basis, but if I'm going to put myself in a business owner's shoes, I'd like to know what my budget impact is for all of 2021. So if we did an extension, I would suggest we might look at doing an extension for all of 2021. It's going to be fits and starts reopening as things start to open back up. So I think an extension is keeping that extension of penalties is one of the levers that we have available. On the second point would be, and it might require talking to our solicitor to make sure this is an equal application, but I know you can't do a carve out for a class of business, but if we could do a credit of 10% or potentially more, if the business could basically show that they were shut down as a result of state government action, then they would be eligible for a credit on their sewer bill moving forward. So I think that would be a way that's equally applied to everyone that was shut down as a result of the governor's orders. So if there's a way that we could, that might require talking to the solicitor, but if we could do that credit for businesses that were required to be shut down due to state government action, that would be my suggestion.
Yeah. Glenn?
I like that idea. That's a pretty good idea if we can do it. I don't know. That's, like you said, we'll have to find out from the solicitor. Do we know approximately what kind of funds we're talking about with the late fees and late charges? Is it a huge amount of money, or do we have any idea?
Yeah, we don't, most of our accounts, quite honestly, pay on time. So
Right.
we don't typically have a whole lot of penalties and interest paid through the normal course of events. There have been a number of accounts that have delayed payment, and that was really the opportunity that the board was providing, was to delay payment and avoid penalties and interest. So there have been a number of those that have done that, and I guess my concern about extending the waiver too long is that, more and more would decide to delay their payment for whatever the duration of time is, and then potentially run us into a problem. But Ethan's correct. There is a healthy fund balance in the sewer fund, and I think we could manage that. In terms of trying to address, only certain businesses, Ethan's also correct, and Glenn, there are, I think, some legal issues that we'd have to wrestle with and hope to work through. But there's also sort of the administrative side of that to figure out, who this would apply to, and go through some process there. So that is a level of work that I don't know how much that would be at this point, quite honestly.
Yep. Understood. Dave?
Yeah, I appreciate what Glenn and Ethan said. I guess something I think about is the struggle to determine deserving businesses, because we have a county program that is providing targeted help, financial help, and to a number of the businesses that we've talked about, heard from as well. So you have the administrative challenges, you have the issue of sorting out who really has been harmed. It's difficult. I mean, if a motel is not closed down, however, if they have been adversely affected because nobody comes, would they qualify under our discussion? And I'm guessing not. Restaurants, you could say they have been closed down, but and they've been hurt. Well, those are concerns that I have. As it relates to what's before us, I think perhaps extending the waiver for another quarter would be fine. I appreciate Ethan's comment about business budgeting for a year, but I think too, if that gets extended for that length of time, it makes the situation more difficult as the end of 2021 approaches.
Yeah. So just to clarify, Dave, you're saying the second quarter that was already going till December 31st, you're saying that could be extended a quarter.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. So I agree. I mean, I think for many of the same reasons, I think you enter into some administrative issues with trying to track, who was really closed because of, state government, and who had to be closed because no one was coming to their hotel, which I think is a great point. Dave, any comment on the third quarter charges? So those that are billed in October, are you thinking, just extend the second quarter, or are you also including the third quarter
You're talking about of 2020.
of
The-
2020?
The waiver of
Yeah.
penalties.
Right.
I think that would be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd like to hear some comment just on the, Ethan, you mentioned it, the 10% credit, or the credit that Hutch mentioned. Again, to Hutch's point, we could do a combination of these things. We could do neither of these. We do really anything we want other than something that's illegal. We can't do that. So I'd love to get just some comments on the 10% credit, knowing that there would be some administrative burden on coding and so forth to make that happen if we were going to go down that path. Glenn or Ethan on that?
Well, I think the extension of penalties and late fees is probably our simplest and easiest lever to use. Because if your business is doing fine, there's no reason to delay that payment. You're going to pay it. So it's really the folks who are struggling with cash flow that are going to say, all right, I can't make the payment. If I don't make the payment, there's no penalty coming. And that lines up with, if you're working with any vendor in this or your bank, they're going to say, all right, don't make the payment now. We're going to add it to the end of your term. So if there's a way that we can extend that, if not for a year, kick it at least into Q1 of 2021 to say, all right, here's some relief, and then let people know we'll revisit it going into 2021. Because once things, it won't be till July, August till things start to really open up, which hopefully they do. And then there's a period of time to get businesses back on their feet before they're even going to be starting to see some positive cash flow. So I think anything we can do that can extend that and delay the late penalties, we should absolutely do. As far as doing any carve out, it would be up to the solicitor. I mean, for me, it would be business should just email and say, based on the governor's orders, we shut down for this many months. We want 10% credit. And if they send the email, we give it to them.
So it's attestation by the business owner.
Yep.
Okay. So Glenn, are you in agreement with the waiver of the second quarter and third quarter to Q1 of 2021?
Yes.
I'll come back. Okay. So to Ethan's point, clearly the simplest thing is to move forward with that based on a motion, us approving that. I think we're all in agreement also that we'll continue to relook at that waiver, but essentially do it on a quarter by quarter basis. Ethan, I completely agree with businesses. They want to know what's going to happen as much as they can, and clearly if we would expand it through the entire year, they would know that the sewer bill would not be something they'd have to pay. So I'm hearing agreement on the Q1 2021 for both the second quarter and third quarter. I think Ethan, your comments about the credit and allowing business to attest to that, I'd be fine if the staff would go to the solicitor and ask the question how that might work. If we would go down that path, we have another meeting in January. We can now, of course, the bill would have already been sent out, right, for the fourth quarter. So we'd have to think that through. Would that be for backdating it, future bills, whatever? I'll let staff think that through. Okay. Do you need staff need any more direction from us prior to a motion?
No, I don't think so. The only thing I would add is that when you took action back in September to waive the penalty and interest, that was done by resolution.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what
Yeah.
the board was going to do.
Got it.
So I didn't prepare a resolution. But
Yeah.
if you essentially say we're adopting a resolution with these provisions,
Yeah.
we can craft it
Okay.
and have it signed as a
Okay.
resolution. So
Okay.
that's how I'd recommend it.
Okay. Yeah. So we don't have to put this right. Okay. Got it. Understood. So I will accept a motion to approve a resolution for continuing to waive second quarter charges that were originally waived to December 31st to the end of Q1, should be the end of March 2021. And then also for the third quarter charges that were billed in October for July, August, and September, also extend that to March 2021 as well. I guess I made a motion. Okay, so moved. Great.
So
Glenn,
moved.
thank you.
Second.
Second by Ethan. I'm going to try to keep my streak of not actually making a motion. So, okay. Any other comments from the board on that motion? Okay, any comments from the public on that motion? Okay, so we have a motion for a resolution, and we'll go to Glenn.
Aye.
Ethan.
Aye.
Dave.
Aye.
And Chair, aye. Motion passes.
Hey, Hutch, do we have any idea if there's been any significant decrease in flows for the sewer?
There has been, when we looked at it back in August, and then when we looked at it again briefly here more recently, there is a slight lower flow amount in the entire system. We didn't try to break that down into different portions of the system very carefully, but back when we looked at it back in the summer, it was about 20%. It's still around 20%.
Okay.
To some extent, if you remember, 2019 was a fairly wet year, especially early that year. So some of the difference, I think, is just the inflow that's not in the system as much this year as was the prior year.
Right.
But that's hard to
Okay.
measure too.
Thanks.
Sure.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have 6A, discussion regarding C2 and C3 zoning districts. And just to give some context, at the last meeting, we had a discussion on various possible zoning amendments, zoning changes that Ethan, you presented. Thought just based on some of that discussion, we could, give staff some more direction on where we might want to go in the future with C2 and C3 zoning districts. I know Tara's on the phone as well, or on the Zoom as well, so she can always provide her input. Ethan, I thought I would give you the floor and just, give your thoughts on, I know you gave some thoughts last time on C2 and C3. So I'll give you the floor and let you chat.
Sure. I'm happy to talk a little bit more about what we had talked about previously. I know Ralph had mentioned in an email, just a reminder of what the purpose of our C3 is, which is destination type uses. But I think you can definitely have destination type uses be the focal point of your zoning and still allow for multiple other uses that are not destination type uses, which I think we see throughout our C3 zoning. So a lot of what I had put forward in that spreadsheet, which I had sent to staff, which I think would make a lot more sense. And I'd love to get the perspective of other folks on the call, Mr. Patel. It's basically expanding a lot of what we did with the Rockvale Square overlay and saying, hey, it made sense to keep that property a vibrant economic driver in our community to add these additional uses to it. So by adding additional uses to Rockvale, Rockvale became a much more valuable property, both to the owners, both to the people who want to utilize that property and the banks who want to finance it. And the Lancaster County Planning Commission at the time had recommended we extend those uses to the neighbors. If it's good for Rockvale Square, it's good for their neighbors in the C3 as well. So having a carve out just for Rockvale, while it's good for Rockvale, I think it's also good for everyone else in the C3 corridor. And when you expand uses in a zoning district, you're not all of a sudden every hotel doesn't automatically become an apartment building or a restaurant or a grocery store. But what it does is it allows the market to respond and say, it makes sense for this parcel. We could make more revenue from it by adding this use or shifting the use. So what we're doing is we're opening it up and saying, let's let the market dictate what the best, highest value use is per parcel by giving it more tools in their toolbox, so to speak. So that's pretty much what I went through and did was I took the Rockvale Square overlay and took that as my guide point and then went through and said, all right, here's which ones made sense to me. So it's a little complicated when you go through our zoning ordinance, hence I made that spreadsheet, but there's about 71 uses that I cataloged, and I probably missed a few. Tara probably saw the ones I missed, but I put in 71 uses and I said, all right, here's the ones that we currently allow in either C1, C2, or C3. And then I just started to go through and basically say, does it make sense to add this as a use in C3 or C2? And I just basically kept adding those as I saw fit. And the goal would be to go through some of those uses and basically say, which ones does the board want to continue to restrict and not allow? And which ones do we want to cut the red tape and give people more freedom to make money with their own property?
Okay. Thank you, Ethan. Questions from other board members? No.
Would that be like Rockvale is a large property? Would this sort of concept apply to every little property or just to certain sizes? Because a smaller property couldn't do much of a mixed use anyway. It would have to be a big property like a Rockvale.
Yeah, well, what we did with Rockvale was we added uses. So to have multiple
Right.
uses, you need to be a larger property. But if we were to say, you know what, there's no reason why we're like currently you're not allowed to have a dry cleaning location anywhere in C3. And it's one of, if it makes sense and someone can start a business that does dry cleaning in C3 next to a hotel, why should we be denying them that right? So that's just one example. Grocery stores are another one that's not allowed in C2 or C3. We used to have grocery stores in the C2 and C3 areas. They're no longer there. Convenience stores are another one. So as you just go through daycare facilities, dentist offices, places of worship are not allowed. So while yes, a small property couldn't have 15 new uses on it, it could shift from being one use to one other use, or it could add one secondary use to that property. So it basically just gives the property owner more flexibility. So the big feedback would be are there uses that the board definitely does not want to ever have happen in the commercial 3 district, and we want to keep banning it?
I'll put the question to you, Ethan. Are there any that you believe shouldn't be in the C3 from that list?
I'm trying to go through and seeing which ones I have in there. I don't think so. Basically, my philosophy goes with as you go into higher densities of use. So your C1 should be sort of your lowest density commercial area. So other zoning ordinances are written where as you go to a higher density of commercial use, it says all of the uses in C1 plus these additional uses. And then C3 is all of the uses allowed in C1 and C2 plus these additional uses. So in my opinion, that's how we should be approaching our higher density areas, should be all of the uses allowed in the lower density areas plus these additional uses.
So Ethan, just to point out, our 1990 zoning ordinance did exactly that. It had uses in the C1 were then allowed in C2 plus additional uses, and then therefore in C3, uses in C1 and C2 were permitted as well as additional uses. When we had our workshop meetings, when we looked at the overhaul in 2016 of the zoning ordinance, And for, I'm going to say 8 years prior to that, because I think that's about how long the zoning ordinance was worked on. Prior to 2016, the concept was that these should be separate commercial uses that serve different retailers as well, or uses and patrons. So that's where the difference then came in the C1, C2, and C3 based on how we previously had it in the 1990 ordinance, and then how through the workshop discussions, how both the business community discussion went, as well as how the board looked at it at that time. You're right. There are some ordinances out there that still have the flow from C1 to C3, or even from a mixed use to C3. And we moved away from that in this update in 2016. The other thing about Rockvale is, we're requiring them to have a master plan before they come in with any major changes of the uses. So they have this list of uses that are allowed, but we want to see how that all looks and works together on the site before we say, hey, go ahead and put all this together. And that includes both residential and various types of commercial uses. So it is a slightly different perspective in the C3 with the Rockvale overlay, because we do have that stipulation in there that we need to take a look at what they're planning to do, how that all functions together before we just allow it to be put there. I think there are some opportunities between the C2 and the C3, but I think that's really, this is the start of that discussion, because this is now a different avenue to take than we had in the 2016 discussions during the workshop meetings.
Yeah, well, 2 comments on that. I sort of came into the process in the middle of workshop discussion. And it was, hey, we're going to make more changes going forward. So far, the only changes we've made to commercial 3 have been to remove uses, all of which each time I've opposed doing that. So there has been that tension throughout this process, but each time we've amended the zoning ordinance in commercial 3, we've removed uses, not added them. So I think we should start adding some uses back as opposed to continuing to remove them. And even with the Rockvale, having the overlay was sort of the quickest way to get them what they needed to get that property back on track. But I would have wanted to give them more flexibility as they did that at the time. But when you're up against the clock, you sort of do what you need to do.
Okay. Other comments, Glenn or Dave?
Not now, no.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, look, Hutch, you have a comment?
Yeah.
Sure.
The other thing
Please.
that I think is influencing where we are with C3 right now is the various planning efforts that have gone forward, starting with the county's tourism plan and the recommendations that came out of that, which led to what was then called the Gateway Plan, and focused more on, different tourist areas and what their needs were. And then also recommended the development of our streetscape plan, which we did almost 4.5 years ago now. And we've been putting a lot of energy into implementing that plan, which is supposed to serve and facilitate the destination uses that are in the zoning ordinance. So that's the other thing I would just mention as being an influence on where the zoning ordinance is now.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, to Ethan's point, I mean, I am for flexibility, but I'm also concerned about, law of unintended consequences. If we just blanket say, yep, everything that's, available in, this zoning area is now available in this, what would that make the area look like? And, what potentially could happen? And it's a little difficult to to say. I mean, clearly these decisions are long-term visionary type decisions, right? I mean, like you said, it took, 8 or so years, or Tara said 8 or so years to get to the 2016 changes. I guess the question I have for, I'll put Tara on the spot. Are there any sort of uses that might concern you if we were to add them in, just from your expertise? Are there any ones that jump out?
So I guess, we've, as Hutch said, we've taken the steps to plan for this corridor. And if we really want the corridor to change in the way that the streetscape plan has intended, then the board really needs to consider whether or not auto uses should be allowed in the C3 district. We have Manheim Pike in Lancaster County. And, if you take a look at that, do you want that recreated here as a possibility? Maybe you do. And if that's what you want, then, that's the direction you should head. We have the C2 zoning district that allows that already at the bypass and Lincoln Highway, as well as within the mixed use zones. So, there's certain, you just need to think about what uses you truly want to see out there along the corridor and move those forward. Personally, I would not want to see another Manheim Pike. We need Manheim Pikes in the county, but we already have one. So
right.
That would be a concern of mine. I think that we're not seeing a typical grocery store along the corridor because it is regionally serving. And so we have, the grocery stores are permitted as accessory uses. And so, we've seen that in the Target and over there on Whitmer and Lincoln Highway, because it's an accessory use of that retail use. So it really, the board really needs to determine if the direction that those planning efforts over the number of years is now not the direction they want to head, or if they want to keep moving in that direction, and whether or not the uses that are in the zoning ordinance currently should stand.
Regarding automobile uses, can we be so specific to say new car dealerships in the zoning ordinance, or is it general?
It's under auto sales.
Yes.
Yeah, because I think of, and I'm not saying that Tesla is coming to East Lampeter Township, but that's a destination. I mean, King of Prussia, the store for Tesla is a destination like setting. I mean, it's one of the few.
I don't think it's an automobile sales according to the PUC, but it's a retail outlet.
Right.
They don't have auto dealerships.
Right.
Just two comments, if I might, Corey. I think you brought up a good point, but I question it a little bit. You said the law of unintended consequences. I think what we're seeing right now in the C3 is the unintended consequences. So, I mean, we already have currently some vacant properties that have been sitting vacant for a period of time that haven't been developed or redeveloped. We've had some properties that we've struggled with getting developer activity on that need it, and it keeps falling through. And I think with our challenges economically in the next few years, we're going to continue to see more of that, not less of it. So I think we're seeing right now we're seeing vacancies in buildings and in land because we don't have enough uses. And I think to Tara's point, it's one of, you could frame it as what uses does the board want to see, or I think the better way to say it would be what uses does the board want to continue to restrict? And I think her point that she brought up is a good one, which is what uses do you not want to see? And I think the board should be very explicit with the business community about what businesses we don't want to allow in our commercial 3 district. And I mean, the ones that I propose changes to was 13, sort of as a by right, and another 8 as special exceptions. So we could go through those one by one and get some feedback on those. Might be beneficial.
Yeah, I'm
It's
fine.
not like there's a long list.
No, Ethan, go start with number 1. Let's talk about it.
So number 1 on my list was convenience store, which we allow now in the Rockville overlay or the commercial 3 overlay. So should convenience stores be allowed in the commercial 3 region? They're currently allowed in C2 and by special exception in C1, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, so convenience stores. Do you want to hear from staff first, or would you like would anyone like to comment on that one?
So
I'm not
I'm
sure.
just going to remind you, I'm so sorry, but I'm going to remind you that with convenience stores, you do have auto fueling stations that are permitted with them.
Say that again, Tara. So if it's a convenience store with the auto filling, that it is allowed.
It is allowed, yes.
So this would be a standalone convenience store, Ethan.
So in our zoning ordinance, it's a more broader definition than just a standalone. It could be a standalone, but it also could be a gas station with a convenience store attached. Is that correct, Tara?
That is correct.
So I'm struggling thinking of a new convenience store that's been built anywhere in this county or country that doesn't have a filling station connected to it.
I believe, honestly, the only one that I'm aware of is 7-Eleven.
Okay.
There are some Turkey Hills that don't now, but those are few and far between. But we
Sure.
also have a vacant former gas station with a convenience store.
Sure. Okay. I'm not feeling a strong reason on this one, but we got 12 more to go. Glenn or Dave, any strong feeling on convenience store?
No, just a general comment,
Yeah.
though. I guess if I have a concern, it has to do with, we presented a plan to all the property owners in C3.
Yeah.
Now, granted, there would be some that would appreciate the comments
Sure.
that Ethan's making, and there would probably be a number that would say, wait a minute, that's not what we were sold.
Right.
And so as it relates to convenience stores, they already exist there.
Right.
Well, we removed them.
As going forward.
Right. They were
Yeah.
allowed and then they're not allowed. So it's one of,
Oh, I see.
They are now a non-conforming use within the
Correct.
C3.
Okay.
Got it.
so we told the business community, you're not allowed to do this anymore.
Okay. I wrote convenience store down. Ethan, why don't you go to the second one?
Daycare facility.
Any backstory on daycare facility, Tara?
We have a number of daycare facilities within the mixed use zoning district. If you travel Lincoln Highway towards the city,
Mhm.
there's a number of daycares. In fact, I think there's 3 that I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Along the Lincoln Highway stretch there. And so it was thought that as people move from their residences into the travel corridor towards the city, that daycare facilities within that area would be an easy drop-off, pickup kind of movement in that area. They are allowed as well in the C1 and the C2 by right, and as accessory in the industrial zones and the BP zone, both by right, or excuse me, by principal and accessory uses within the BP zone. And then they're allowed in all of the village zones except village residential. So wherever there's village commercial or village general, which would be Smoketown and the Soudersburg area, they'd be permitted there as well.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much employment and, frankly, between Rockville and Tanger, that having a daycare facility within the C3, that would not bother me at all. And to your point, people are driving from Saldersburg and even as far, Tara, that you come from, potentially through the city as well. So, or towards the city, I'm sorry. So, clearly anywhere that's available for their children, that's at the right price, they're gonna choose that facility.
And then, of course, there's Department of Ed, or excuse me, Department of Welfare requirements that would need to be met by those facilities.
Yep. Sure. Okay. Any thoughts on daycare facility? Concerns? Wanting to restrict it, to use Ethan's test.
Who wants to keep the ban?
Okay, I'm not hearing anything against daycare facility. Does staff have any opinion on daycare facility other than what Tara suggested? Or Tara gave us a...
I think what
Background.
Tara was saying is that they are provided for.
Yeah.
And they do exist already in other zones.
Yeah.
The only thing I would add is that, you don't need to provide for every use in every zone.
Understood.
Yeah, I think generally, and this is what we're going to sort of, and this is why it's good to have the dialogue, because you have some philosophical differences here, and that's just, it's okay to have philosophical differences, but it comes down to, I think you can make the argument, which I think sort of Tara made, which is, all right, it's provided here. It makes sense if you're moving from here. So if you were, wanting to be an investor in a daycare startup, you may want to put it in our mixed use area right now, but 6 months from now, or 18 months from now, or 4 years from now, the requirements on the ground may change and the economy may be a little different. What you want is the business to be able to, if someone thinks that they can make money putting a daycare facility, next door to Rockville, I think they should try it. And if they're right, they're going to make money and it's going to be successful. And if they're wrong, they're going to shut down within 6 months. So it's more of, do we allow the market to make that decision, or do we want to make the decision sitting here right now saying, you know what, it's never going to be a good idea to have a daycare on Route 30. So that's the philosophical difference of, should we let the market make that decision, or should we say there's no negative consequence to having a daycare, therefore we shouldn't ban it. Now, if we allow it, you might never have one ever built, but it's one of, let's allow it and let the business owner make that decision. The next one is dry cleaner.
As Ethan has pointed out in the past, our zoning ordinance is a living document.
Yeah.
So these aren't forever decisions.
Right.
These are closer at hand decisions than that. So it has changed. The ordinance has changed essentially every year since it was adopted.
Mm-hmm.
And I would expect it would continue to change as needs are identified. And of course, the process that this will ultimately have to go through is that, the board's recommendations will have to go to the planning, or your own planning commission, be reviewed, be sent out for the other planning commissions to look at, be reviewed comments before it ultimately comes back to the board with those recommendations. So there is that planning process that is yet to come.
Yeah, and I think, understood. I think the goal of this conversation is just to get some, I'll call it direction, to lead us down one path or the other. I am just I know we have multiple guests here for the next agenda item. I think it's in my power to table this discussion, go to that item and come back. Would that be, never done that in my years of chair, but I if okay with you, Ethan, I'm gonna table this just for 10 minutes or so. Let's get to the resolution regarding emergency housing program. Let these guys talk. We'll hopefully make a decision on that, and then we can jump back to that. Sound good? Okay. Okay, number 7A, we have a resolution regarding emergency housing program. I know at the last meeting, we had a good conversation with Jen, Justin, and Lisa regarding emergency housing needs in the frankly in the county, but impact on us and what we can do to help. Understand there's been some discussion between many of you and Hutch related to a possible resolution that we'll take a look at very shortly, and also a memorandum of understanding that's being talked about as well. So, Justin, if it's okay with you, I'll pass it off to you if you want to just give some context, and then we can discuss as a board and move forward.
Sure, and also want to point out that Mike McKenna from Tabor is here with us tonight, as well as Lisa Horse. So again, just to provide the framework again, last meeting we discussed the need for kind of an emergency plan for housing. As you're aware, we have certain shelters set up throughout the county to deal with those who have become displaced, homeless. With the current pandemic, we're looking for a concept to be able to find a space relatively quickly to be able to house those who we cannot provide a safe place to stay, whether it's because of COVID related distancing. That's one of the reasons why kind of the existing infrastructure for housing people has been disrupted, because we have less capacity. Additionally, we kind of discussed that with zoning anywhere in the county, that could be an issue to kind of take an approach of using existing space and converting it for a temporary use, especially when in this specific case, you're taking perhaps a hotel with 40 or so rooms and having extended stay for multiple months, where that's not allowed throughout the zoning. We are aware throughout the county that people have been staying in hotels, and we want to make sure that we can identify and take care of their needs as well. Kind of where we've come from last meeting was we got together a group of potential stakeholders in the concept, kind of went through a discussion of many questions. How does this look? Who's doing what role and responsibility? So while we don't have a definitive memorandum of understanding at this point, we have started the discussion and the framework that if you adopt your resolution would allow your staff to work with these various agencies to develop the roles and responsibilities moving forward. Some of those might mean having staff 24/7 to kind of keep an eye on operations. It might be additional housing agencies coming in and providing case management for their referrals to be able to kind of work with them to get them rehoused. Additionally, food service with a number of organizations, and just kind of having a single point contact for the township and for all parties involved. The next step would be after this, if this is approved, would be working with a hotel owner or two to define how that agreement would be in place to perhaps lease space to be able to house people. We don't know exactly at this point if we're going to fully occupy a building, depending on the need. It could be, if everyone has seen kind of the relief bill that's come out, it has kind of kicked the can for another month until the end of January for eviction moratorium. However, we're still seeing issues with people being evicted or the landlord just ending the lease and then those people become displaced. So that's kind of where we're at from last time, and I can open up to Mike or Lisa if they have any other additional comments.
Thanks, Justin. Mike or Lisa?
I would just add that this would fit within the broader homeless coalition and the services therein. We have a pretty robust system for screening individuals who are homeless and connecting them to the shelter that kind of best fits the circumstances for that household. There are a number of shelters that operate across the county, and because of physical distancing, because of COVID, they do have reduced capacity. But an opportunity like this one in the township would really be an extension of that process. And so we'd be using a lot of procedures and policies that have been in place for nearly a decade. And in the case of Tabor, the space that we operate, TLC, is actually an old hotel. So there's a lot of protocols we've developed over the years that could be applicable here. And I'm really encouraged by the partners at the table, including CVCCS, CAP, Parish Resource Center, and then of course the Office for the Coalition and the county and city. I think this is going to be a really strong partnership to make sure that we have effective service delivery and accountability for all the players.
Thank you, Mike. Lisa?
Well, we're just excited that this is even on the table. It just gives us another avenue to house some of the people that we come across all the time. So, and just really glad to be working with the rest of the team also on the same things that they talked about on food service and that type of thing. So we're already working on some other ideas for that. So, we're excited.
Thank you. Okay, any comments from the board? Questions?
Have we looked at locations, or is that still in the future?
Yeah, we have looked at locations, but there's nothing under agreement at this point. So, nothing's definitive as far as exact hotel at this point.
Okay.
I appreciate the collaboration between staff and the organizations, Tabor and the county and CVCSS. It's great to see all these different groups working together for our community. So it's heartwarming this time of year that we're all doing this. So again, thanks Justin and Mike for reaching out 2 months ago or so to me and Lisa. I think Lisa, you reached out to Dave to connect the dots. So it's again heartwarming to see all these different groups working together. Okay, we have a resolution in front of us. Again, the resolution is to allow staff to work together with the organizations we mentioned to essentially sign a memorandum or work together on that memorandum of understanding. Also, in it, it talks about the board suspending and waiving time limitations on length of stay in hotels and motels, and essentially allows officials of East Lampeter Township to address the current emergency conditions, entering into such contracts and agreements for the provision of housing and shelters to meet the emergency. And these actions can be taken without regard to the time-consuming procedures and formalities normally prescribed by the law. And essentially puts it out that the resolution currently goes through March 31st, 2021. Of course, we can rescind it or extend it based on the Board of Supervisors' action. Okay. Accept the motion.
I would move that we adopt the resolution as you just described it. That's before us.
Okay, we have a motion made by Dave.
Second.
Second by Ethan. Any other comments from the board? Comments from the public? Okay, voice vote, roll call vote. Glenn?
Aye.
Ethan?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
And chair's aye. Motion passes. Thank you again.
Thank you
Thank
all,
you.
and
Thanks.
thank you for tabling, but zoning interests me, so I'm going to stick around.
Justin, you can stay on if you'd like.
Yeah, as a redevelopment authority, we're very interested.
Sounds good. Okay, I will.
I gotta get kids to bed, so I'm gonna jump. Thank,
Thank
you
you,
very
Mike.
much. All right. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
You too. Okay, back on the agenda, we have back to the discussion regarding C2 and C3 zoning districts. We were discussing the daycare facility. Again, just to give direction to staff about daycare facilities, I personally don't have an issue with it. I hear staff's point of view on, this is an allowed use in other zoning districts, but I don't have a huge concern about adding that daycare facility. Okay, not seeing any other comments. Ethan, if you want to go to next item.
Sure. Dry cleaners and laundromats. I have them being added as uses in C2 and C3. Currently allowed in
these are-
C1.
They're currently allowed in C1 in the business park, the mixed use, the village general, and the village commercial. So all typically locally serving areas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, so it's similar concept as the daycare, and it's going to go to sort of the next one as well, the next two, which is basically financial institutions, banks, and grocery stores.
Are financial institutions, banks, and grocery stores? Well, I know. Yep. So financial institutions and banks, are they allowed in the C1, BP, MU, and VC?
They are allowed in the C1, C2, BP, bird in hand, village general, village commercial.
Yeah,
And I'd also like to point out,
accessory in C2 and C3 for grocery stores.
Ethan, one more time. I'm sorry, I missed that.
Grocery stores are an accessory use in C2 and C3.
oh, I was only on financial institutions.
Yeah, that's what okay, I got you. So financial institutions, C1, C2, BP, VG, VC.
That's correct.
Yep. Grocery
And
stores.
every retail facility out there has a Mac machine.
Mm-hmm. You just say Mac machine.
Yeah.
That's
dating
my
myself.
language. That's Philly. I know what you mean.
Yes.
And my parents had one of those.
Okay.
Just one quick comment. As someone who's traveled extensively and stayed in almost every commercial area with a convention center and a hotel in a metro area in America, I've used all of these things in those areas. So I've found a PNC bank or a Wells Fargo or a dry cleaner when you have to, and grab food at a grocery store or a convenience store. So that's some of what I bring to this when I look through this as someone who goes to a lot of trade shows, hundreds and hundreds of trade shows all over the country. And I'm usually in built up commercial areas with hotels and convention centers or tourist destinations.
Yeah. So let's back up to dry cleaners. So Ethan, again, you're looking to add dry cleaners to C2 and C3 is your thought here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if the board determines that we're going to make some of these changes, then we really need to take a look at the purpose statements of these districts because they're no longer relevant.
Right. Applicable. Yep.
As Hutch pointed out earlier, the C3 was destination type uses.
Tara, do you actually have the statements for each of C1, C2, C3 handy?
I do.
Because I'm wondering, as we're going through this and I'm looking at the clock, we might be here till 2:00 in the morning based on this. And I'm wondering if it's more of a conversation of what's our strategy for these districts and what can we agree on, instead of going one by one through these. Again, I'm probably closest to Ethan on this from a flexibility perspective. I know when I've traveled as well and stayed in, a hotel for 3 days, frankly, I'd rather go to a supermarket nearby and pick up a few snacks and not, end up sitting at a restaurant bar for, 3 hours. So I get it. I'm not sure if I stayed at any of the hotels in our area. I mean, yes, Aldi is an example, or maybe Target, but I've definitely done the same thing. I've had to dry clean clothes because they ended up getting spilled on in my laundry. I'm not sure if I stayed at a hotel, on Route 30, where I would go. I mean, Yorgies would probably be my best solution, and it's you know through a residential area. I mean, of course, we all know where it is. So I get it. I've clearly gone to banks. You know, yes, ATM machines are in all these convenience stores. So maybe I would have stopped at Wawa to take money out at their ATM. But I get it. Business travelers don't always go to a restaurant. They use other residential like services. But Tara, can you to try not to keep us till 2 o'clock in the morning?
If I could, Corey, I'll just cut right to what I think is sort of the crux of the issue, which is, and it comes down to whether or not you should change the purpose statement or not. I don't think you need to. You can still have a purpose statement that gives you focus. But it really comes down to, when I look at the amendments I have sort of proposed, they really are a basket of items that go together. I mean, there's really no way you can logically make an argument for having a dry cleaner and not having a bank. Because both of those really have to do with local traffic. And so the two pieces that are also, if I were to go down to, number, 8, 9, and 10 of, if I just have it sorted on a spreadsheet in front of me, but if you add housing and office uses, then all of a sudden, all of those other things from a staff perspective make sense. But right now, restricting and saying you can't have an office space anywhere in C3, and you can't have an apartment building or a house in C. You can't build a house in C3, and you can't build an office space in C3. We just added both of those uses to Rockvale.
Mm-hmm.
And so the concept is, if you say, all right, it's now, we can let the local economy adapt and say, you know what, we might need a co-working space, might make a whole lot of sense in an old building that's not being used in C3, or a building might make a better use as an apartment. If the market makes that move in that direction, then all of your other uses may make more sense around them. So it really comes down to, are we going to allow sort of office uses and multifamily dwellings? If so, then yeah, it makes much more sense. I still think it makes sense to have all of these other uses, even if those aren't allowed. But I think that's probably the biggest issue that people may have stronger feelings about is, are people allowed to go and work there who have white collar jobs, or are we just allowing people to work there who don't?
Okay, I'll pivot again. Thank you, Ethan, for that. That's helpful. So let's talk about office and multi-unit housing. Talk about office first. So office is allowed where, Tara?
C1, C2, I1, I2, BP, mixed use, bird in hand, village general, and village commercial.
Okay, many places. And the reason that it's not, does anyone recall those conversations or history of why it's not allowed?
Within the C3,
Yes. Yep. Sorry.
because again, the purpose
Yeah,
statement, but it's a destination type use. So it was really, an office space isn't necessarily a destination except for those employed there.
Okay. Other board members' thoughts on office space?
I don't see it fitting, to be honest with you. I mean, we've tried hard to keep that C3 as a distinct area, and throwing everything else in, we might as well just drop all the zoning and just have one big zone. I don't see a need for any offices.
like
Yeah.
Ethan said, they tie together a lot of the uses that have been identified. And I know Ethan commented on, there's some sites along this corridor that there was attempts made to develop them. And we find ourselves in a unique situation right now with this pandemic that directly affected one of those major projects, or the development would most likely be proceeding.
Mhm.
So I think, we got to keep that in mind when we consider these things. Tanger, or not Tanger, but rather Rockvale is a different story. That was, the overlay, but we do have control of that. I'm with Glenn on, office space, and I think what happens, and that ties back to some of these other items
Right.
as well.
Right. Sure, if you had office space, it would make sense to have banks and dry cleaners and
Yeah,
things.
and I think
Yeah,
about the other landowners that would have
Yeah.
been along there, would have participated in discussions
Right.
about uses that would be permitted in this area. I did not personally participate in those discussions, so I don't know what those conversations were like.
Any additional board comments on office space?
I mean, if you think about it, it's really what class of office space. I mean, if it's a destination where people go to work, you have sort of a dedicated office building, and some of those are attached to a warehouse. There's plenty of office space in the C3 now, but most of the people who work there stand up all day. But they still have the same needs as anyone who goes to an office and sits down all day. So they still need their kids taken care of, and they still need dry cleaning. So I think it's a little bit disingenuous to say that there's no work, like that only workers who sit down at desks require those amenities. And then the workers who don't sit down at desks don't need those. They need to drive back towards where they live to get them. So we already have a lot, but I think the biggest thing is looking forward. What we define as being an office use is very different going forward than it is right now. I mean, most of us are sitting in our offices in our house. Most of my employees work from their house or from co-working facilities in the county or around the country. So what we define as office space may be, 800 square feet that's attached to another use in an existing building.
Any other thoughts on office space? Any other comments from staff about office space? Again, I would agree with Ethan. I mean, employees working at Tanger, retail, fast food restaurants, they have the same needs as office workers. I agree with that. I guess, when I hear office space or office workers, I the first thing that comes to mind is, a multi-story, office building. I mean, that's the first thing that I picture or envision when I hear that. I'm not hearing agreement from Glenn or Dave on adding office space to this. Let's move to multi-use housing, multi-unit housing, and get conversation going for that. Tara, where is that allowed?
Okay. Okay, in the R3, C1, BP with limitations on number of units, mixed use, and that's all by right, by special exception in bird in hand, village general, village commercial, and village residential.
And then it also has another piece that requires public sewer, if I'm not mistaken.
It does require public sewer.
You can give comments on multi-unit housing. Ethan?
I
I'm
mean, my
sorry.
comments are
Sid.
going to be the same sort of as all of these. Of if someone's got a piece of land or an empty building, they're going to try to get the best return on investment possible. So if it means putting up a hotel or putting up a retail shop, putting up a coffee shop, a restaurant, an office space, or an apartment, or a combination of all of those things, like we just had go in Bridgeport, I lean towards letting the landowner make that decision and not restricting his options. But we have the services, we have the transportation network, we have the public infrastructure of sewer and water. So it makes sense to have more high density uses where we have the existing infrastructure generally. So on all of these, that's why I've added all of those uses. Is this is where we have the most infrastructure already built out that doesn't require any new infrastructure. The landowner is going to seek the highest, best use for their property, and the market's going to be the dictator of whether that's successful or not.
Okay, thank you. Tara, are we going to make a comment?
No, I was going to wait for you all to make your comments.
Okay, sure. Glenn or Dave? Glenn?
I'm not sure this is a good fit in long route.
Yeah, I'm not seeing good fit for that.
Okay.
I mean, I understand, you know, what Ethan's saying about, you know, let the market dictate, but, you know, at some point, I suppose zoning has to come into play, and you try to make it predictable for current landowners what they expect their neighbors to be doing. I mean, where I live, if somebody'd want to put a convenience store beside my house,
You'd have a problem
I'd be
with that.
upset.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering if some of that same logic may apply in this case when maybe it's financially feasible, but that doesn't make it appropriate. That's just a comment.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand, you know, clearly using the residential examples of, you know, a way to make the point. I completely agree. However, when I think of certain properties on Route 30 that Lincoln Highway East that, you know, have had difficulty, you know, redeveloping for any reason, you know, I don't want to throw an individual example out, but we can all think of different ones, you know, across. If a bank was there, I'm not sure it would hurt any, you know, any of the neighbors. I think the neighbors next door to a building that's been closed or has not been leased or, you know, is in disrepair would much rather, you know, a brand new dry cleaner. I'm just picking something off the list, financial institution, a PNC bank, whatever, compared to having nothing there. So, you know, I see Ethan's points. Again, I you know, these decisions clearly are not easy decisions. And, you know, Dave, I hear your point about, you know, the existing neighbor, you know, when they developed their land, they had some sort of idea of what possibly could be their neighbor. And I completely understand that. You know, from my perspective, I'll repeat what I said earlier. I'm all for flexibility at this point in time because of the financial strain that, you know, owners of property are on. Frankly, we could be, you know, going down that path if things continue for, you know, years, 2 years, 3 years. I mean, we definitely, you know, in my mind, need to be more open to other uses. Frankly, Ethan, you know, we've definitely had conversation about these things, but I definitely would want to think and get opinion of the planning commission and current, you know, owners of land on that, you know, that would be impacted by this. Because me sitting here thinking about it, yes, I would love more tax dollars. I would love more success for our landowners and business owners along Lincoln Highway, but I'm not sure that I can give support to some of these things at this point without really understanding the full impact. Other comments? Touch?
just another thought that occurred to me. Your industrial development,
Yep.
industrial commercial development authority, I should say, is about to spend about $100,000 to go through a branding
Yep.
effort. And I think through that process and the kinds of things that they're going to be doing, outreach into the community, getting input on that effort, I think might shed some light on what the community thinks about this corridor. And although it's not directed necessarily at the uses specifically,
Right.
I think there might be some light shed on what the business people in the corridor are thinking and feeling about the corridor and what they'd like the image of the corridor to be. So that's going to take some time, a number of months to go through that process. But I think at the end of it, might have some additional considerations.
Yep. Yep. I think that will definitely be helpful. So that's good input. Other comments?
Yeah, I would suggest we table some of this discussion until we get through some of that stuff.
The
Yeah, and
goal
again,
of having the discussion is to start to involve the rest of the people. So I think kicking it off and saying, yes, let's actually talk about it with some of our other stakeholders is a fantastic idea. Let's get it going.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would add to that. I mean, I think it's great that we're gonna talk to the stakeholders on Route 30. I've had conversations with neighbors. The number one question I get is asking me about a certain property or properties along Route 30. Like, hey, what's happening with XYZ property? So, I think from a neighbor's perspective, from the typical residential neighbor, they want a vibrant Lincoln Highway East. I mean, they want a clean, safe, place to, be proud of. Not, a place where, we have businesses that have been shuttered for some time or in disrepair or so forth. So, I think we also need to bring into the discussion, just the normal residential taxpayer in the area, which we definitely bring that, but I think that's an important voice we need at that table. Okay, good discussion. Any comments from the public on this discussion? I see a few folks here. Yep.
Hi, this is Bavish Patel. I'm one of the owners of the Roadway Motel, 2331 Lincoln Highway East. And appreciate you guys taking the time and discussing the subject matter. I'm also with the hotel group that has spoken to you several times regarding our issue, the occupancy, the ADR. And I've been helping Steve and Durham with putting data together, gathering data, et cetera. And we spoke to you guys on the last call as well. So where my problem is that twofold. It comes into this discussion about the ordinance because a few years back, if you remember, our site was under agreement with Lidl grocery store. And at the last minute, before we were going to go hard, they decided to pull out because of downsizing. And I think they were going through some financial distress and whatnot too. Since then, we've had it listed with a couple different brokers. We've had it listed with Bennett Williams right now. And we're just having a tough time finding a buyer for that property because of where the zoning is with C3 and the destination use on it. Our business the last couple of years has fallen dramatically. Number one, because of new supply coming into the market. A lot of new hotels have popped up, and the demand is not there. We've tried ourselves to put up a hotel, but when we did the study, it didn't look good on our end, so we've held back, and that's why we haven't put up a property ourselves on it. Now, just with COVID, our numbers are in the occupancy, they're in the teens. I don't know how much longer we're going to survive. We're trying to work with the banks. The banks are putting us under pressure. Either we give it back to the bank and the bank does whatever they need to do with it, or we work something out. We've even think about closing the property and boarding it up and just coming up with a deal with the bank until we sell the property. Again, that doesn't look good on that corridor, right where that property is, right where that transaction, or right where the traffic light is. So again, I know that you guys gave some consideration to Rockville, and I think in due fairness, I think it would be fair to everybody that is going through a similar situation, trying to sell a property for better usage, because again, you've seen new properties prop up and then the older properties just don't work. I mean, right now I'd love to create a deal with Justin to see if there's housing needs that we can maybe even house some of the homeless at our property. Anything to get heads in beds to just get us going and surviving. We went through all the different programs that the governor has put out, the county has put out. We haven't got much relief on that end either. And I know you guys put out a letter to the officials on the federal level as well as the state level, and we really appreciate that as well. But where my biggest concern is, and I think Ethan commented on this, is I think you need to look at each area or each property and see if it's a fit or not. I mean, I think at one time we did have a C-store interested, but then that was shut down by the town right away. And so they just walked away. We've had interest by a car wash. I don't know if that's going to go through or not. Again, there's so many opportunities that have come to us, but again, because of zoning, we're not able to move forward. Not so many opportunities, I would say, a few opportunities. We also had BlackRock, the owner, I forget the gentleman's name, he passed away last year, was thinking about doing something, but then that didn't come to fruition either because that was just early in the stages. So we've tried, our brokers have tried, but we're just having a tough time with that property. And I mean, if you've got somebody that's interested in maybe helping us buy it, we would listen. I know that I think we've also met with, I think the gentleman's name was Dave earlier last year. He came to the hotel and we discussed the issue and the problem with him as well. And at that time, I think came back and said that the town is not looking in that direction. They've got a plan and they're moving towards that plan. But again, I'm reading articles right now that the market is not going to bounce back until 22, 23. Events, conventions are not going to come back right away. Towards even Dutch Wonderland, God knows when that's going to bounce back to like it used to be. So all these events, destination, town that we're in, I don't know when that market is really going to come back. Is it going to be 2 years? Is it going to be 3 years? Or is it going to be 5 years? Don't know. Don't know how long we're going to survive. And it's all about survival for us right now. So if there is some kind of change, modification, tweak, or the town can work with us on this zoning, I think that will go a long way and help us.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments from the board? Okay. Again, we don't have a motion at this point or any business to decide on. It's really just to get a discussion started. And, you know, I like the idea of the Industrial Commercial Development Authority and the work that they're going to do around branding to help at least get some data points around, you know, what the Route 30 East or Lincoln Highway East area should be. So again, thank you, Tara. Thank you, Ethan. And we'll continue the discussion. Okay, next on the agenda we handled 7A. We have 7B, appointment of CV region representative alternate to the LCTCB. Hutch, that has been you in the past.
Correct.
And the other Upper Lake Hawk and West Earl are in agreement to have you as the representative, and then the alternate would be Jenna.
Correct.
Okay, Jenna C. Schultz she's the West Earl Township Manager as the alternate.
Okay.
Okay.
Motion.
Motion made by Dave,
Second.
second by Ethan. Any other comments? I do want to thank Hutch, for stepping up and taking care of this important role. Okay, we'll do a voice vote. Glenn,
Aye.
Ethan,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
and chair's aye. Motion passes. Okay. Adoption of 2021 budget for all funds. Hutch.
So the draft budget had been prepared. The board held a workshop meeting back at the end of October where it was reviewed and discussed. We then advertised the budget as being available for public inspection, and it has been available for more than 20 days, which is the code requirement. Since the time of the budget workshop, there were a couple of what I would consider to be minor changes. Kevin prepared a list of those changes. They sort of summarize as being changes related to the change in the negotiated pay increase with our non-uniform union, and as that would affect those employees as well as other non-uniform employees, going from 1.7%, which is what was in the original draft budget, to 2%, which is the rate that was agreed upon. It also includes a couple of items that had been budgeted in 2020, and for whatever reason, because, for example, a truck just didn't get through manufacturing and we're not going to take delivery of it, so we're not going to pay for it till sometime in 21. And although that will look slightly different on the budget document, it doesn't really change anything in terms of the township's financial picture, because you're
not paying it this year.
The fund budget,
right.
The fund balance in 20 is a little higher, and the expenditure in 21 is a little higher.
Yep.
So those sorts of things are what has been listed as proposed changes from the draft. Kevin also prepared a new budget summary, which includes those changes, which is also provided to the board,
yep.
Showing the projected revenues and expenditures for 2020 and projected fund balance at the end of the year, and proposed revenues and expenditures for 21 and projected fund balance at the end of 21 for all of the operating and fiduciary funds that are the board's responsibility. There are other funds that I'm sure the board has interest in, and we've certainly reviewed with the board, but they're actually adopted. The sewer authority, for example, adopts their own
right.
sewer authority fund as well as the stormwater fund, and they did that at their last meeting earlier in December. The TIF fund is under the Industrial Commercial Development Authority, and that'll be on their agenda on January 4 for adoption. So those are the other funds that are related to the township's operations, but not directly Board of Supervisors' responsibility. So the projected fund balance in the general fund meets the board's policy on the amount that is minimum.
Yep.
And I would recommend board approval.
Okay, we have the 2021 budget in front of us for all funds. I'll accept a motion, and second, then we can have discussion.
So moved.
So moved by Glenn.
Second.
I'll second the motion. Oh, Ethan.
Second by Ethan. Ethan's getting in today. Okay, we have a motion made and second. Any discussion from the board on the motion for adoption of the 2021 budget for all funds? Okay, any comments from the public? Okay, appreciate staff putting the budget together, and I know it takes a lot of time, and it's always well discussed and described to us, and well documented, so I appreciate it. Okay, we'll do a voice vote. Glenn?
Aye.
Dave? Sorry, Ethan?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Chair, aye. Okay, motion passes for the budget. Thank you. And then next on the agenda, we have resolution for the 2021 real estate tax millage rate.
So what's drafted in the resolution is the same rate as you had in 2019 and 2020. It's 1.9 mils.
Yep.
And that is what was anticipated in the budget document as well.
Correct. Good. Okay.
I'll make a motion, we adopt a resolution regarding the tax rate of 1.9 mils.
Great. Motion made.
Second.
Second by Glenn. Okay. Any other comments from the board?
No.
Okay. Any comments from the public? Again, I want to thank staff and the board for hopefully now, well, we passed the budget with the same amount, and hopefully we'll pass this very shortly. So again, thanks. Glenn?
Yes.
Aye?
Aye. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Ethan?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Okay. E, approval of 2021 non-contract employees pay policy.
So the board had developed and adopted a pay policy a number of years ago. And we've continued with that same policy going forward. Again, Kevin has prepared that document to reflect the changes in the pay ranges as well as the change in the pay rates by position. And that's ready for your action.
Okay. Set the motion for this.
So moved.
So moved by Dave,
Second.
second by Glenn. Any comments from the board on the employee pay policy? Any comments from the public? Okay, we'll take a vote. Glenn?
Aye.
Ethan?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Okay, approval of the AFSCME agreement beginning 1/1/21.
The current agreement expires the end of this year, and we had been engaged in negotiations with our local AFSCME unit and came to an agreement on the terms, which include several changes, a number of changes to the existing agreement. The largest ones that I would mention would be the change in the contribution amount for the township to their HSA accounts.
Yep.
The pay rates that would be increasing, as I said earlier, by 2%, and the elimination of the post-retirement medical coverage for employees who are hired after this year.
Mhm.
The other items, are not small items, but not as significant. There's change in prescription drug deductibles. There's some management rights changes having to do with really what we did this year, but just wasn't really provided for in the contract when there's a state of emergency
Right.
declared, and things of that nature. So
Okay. It's a
they have
2-year,
indicated their agreement, and
Yep.
we'd recommend the board approve as well.
it's a 2-year agreement.
Correct.
Okay, so we have approval of the AFSCME agreement beginning 1/1/2021.
So
I move
moved.
for approval. Oh,
I'll give that to Glenn.
there's a little delay. I'll
Yeah.
second the motion.
Okay, second by Dave. Any other comments from the board?
No.
Okay, any comments from the public? Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. Glenn?
Aye.
Ethan?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. Thank you for the negotiation. Thank you to AFSCME for helping us through that. as well. Okay, authorization to complete settlement to acquire 2551 Old Philadelphia Pike. Hutch.
The board entered into a purchase agreement back in early October this year to acquire 2551 Old Philadelphia Pike, otherwise known as the Knoltz Mill property. Staff has been engaged in due diligence efforts since that time. We've had physical inspections made of the property and the structures on the property. No major or even minor concerns were raised as part of those. A few maintenance things that were mentioned that we could try to address if we acquire it. Staff has also been on the property, gone through those inspections, and thought of, what we might do with the property. And I think our perspective is that the property provides some really exciting opportunities to deal with our MS4 program and pollution reduction requirements that we have, and the possibilities that go along with this property are that we would have control of the dam and the mill race that goes along with the property, and I think that'll provide some opportunities there. We do own the property directly adjacent to this property. It was purchased a number of years ago and intended to be developed as a park. We've started some of those efforts, and there's a concept plan that's in the CV Park plan for that property, and I think there's some interesting opportunities that might come about related to how that property is developed as a park by including, or at least considering, what this property might also offer in that regard. So the property was initially appraised, and that was the basis of the purchase price that was included on the purchase agreement. And we're ready to go forward with this, with the settlement, if the board is willing to do that.
Good. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for the explanation. I'll accept the motion, then we can add any comments.
I'll move that we authorize the settlement on 2551 Old Philadelphia Pike.
Okay. Motion made.
Second.
Second by Ethan. Any comments from the board?
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about the timing of buying this property. I can see the benefits with MS4 and all that stuff, but with everybody, we hear all this about people struggling and things are tough, and the township turns around and buys a property for a future park. I'm just a little concerned about the timing, and maybe we don't have any choice, but that it seems like it's not the best. And I'm also concerned. I know you did the due diligence, but I'm really concerned about long-term maintenance on that mill and all those silos and those sheds way up in the air. I think there's going to be more maintenance involved in that than what we anticipate.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about maintenance first, and then just the due diligence? And
Sure. The handful of maintenance items that were pointed out to us during the inspection of the property were really related to the dwelling more than the mill itself. The barn and the mill are what appear to be, and what the experts indicated, are very solid structures. There's no rot or other decay that's indicated in the structural elements of the buildings. The current owner has, I think, done a good job at maintaining the facilities, and I'm sure that there are going to be things that'll need to be done. I think one of the things that he pointed out to us when we were down there that he had been thinking about as a future item is some roof work on the mill building itself. So, that's not unusual for any property. You have to pay attention to your roof. So yeah, I'm confident that Glenn's right. There will certainly be maintenance things that have to be addressed. The current owner, based upon the purchase agreement and his intention as part of that agreement, will continue to be the tenant on the property
Yeah.
immediately upon settlement. So he'll still be there for the foreseeable future in that space. So it's not going to be an unoccupied,
Right.
vacant property or building, which I think helps us to keep an eye on it and maintain it as well.
Yeah.
Um,
And I guess to Glenn's first point about, timing of this, we're in the global pandemic. We're trying to reduce expenses as much as we can, as much as we can in our budget. Our neighbors and others are struggling, especially our business owners. To your point, Hutch, we are going to be getting some revenue back. It's not like we're buying it and there's nothing going to be happening. There is a lease back, essentially. A tenant, the current owner, will be paying us to stay in there. I think a property like this is not going to come on the market very soon. The property right next to our park that we believe we need for MS4 purposes, may never come back on the market in the next X number of years. But other comments to Glenn's point, I think those comments came up in the public comments last meeting as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say if the state government were willing to delay MS4 requirements for the next 5 to 10 years, Glenn would have a very good point. But if we look at, we have a requirement to make these MS4 reductions, and buying this property gives us an excellent opportunity to do that at a much lower cost. So if we want to maintain low property taxes and low stormwater fees for the next 10 years, this property is one of the best ways to do that.
Yeah, I think to Glenn's point, it's the optics of it too, right? It's, someone, people in the community, if they watched these meetings or attended or read the paper, saw we're buying a property. Why are you buying a property? It clearly, without knowing the details of MS4, which is an extremely complex, thing. I don't think people are experts in phosphorus and nitrates and all those other things and understand the potential fees and penalties that we as a municipality could incur. Again, I understand the comment, Glenn, and understand why, we'd get questions like that. So other comments?
Well, when you buy real estate, you buy it when it's available. And I think
Right.
that's part of the issue. I don't think we went seeking this property. It became available and we were informed of it. And I shared Glenn's concern too regarding the optics. I think that's the
Yeah.
thing about it. But
Yeah.
I support the purchase.
Glenn, any other comments?
No, I just giving my thoughts.
Yeah, no, totally understood. I appreciate it. Any comments from the public? Did I get a motion? I can't remember.
Yes.
I did. Okay. Any other comments from the public? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Motion for Glenn,
Aye.
Ethan,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
and chair's aye. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, Hutch, Walnut Street Extension, Greater Lancaster Heritage Pathway.
Yes. At the board's November meeting, you had a presentation and information provided by the folks from Hine and their consultants about the status of the project. And at that time, the board suggested that we do some additional outreach to our citizens as well, primarily the ones that'll be closest to the facility if it is, or when it's constructed. And so with Tara's help, I did prepare a draft of what would be both a newsletter article as well as an addition to the website. And connected on the website, there would be survey questions that we could ask those that read the article and look at we'd plan to have the images of the overall concept plan as well as the image that was provided on the bridge for people to look at, and then invite them as part of that article to come to your January 18 meeting, where High would again present additional information. We'd hope that because of the situation, most people would come via Zoom and participate in that way. And the board could get additional feedback, as well as the folks from High get additional feedback on the development of that project. So if there are any questions or concerns or suggestions on how we could improve what's been drafted, looking for that input.
So my only concern is, I definitely want the public participation. Hopefully they will join by Zoom. My only concern is if the newsletter is received in mid-January, January 15th, and the board meetings, roughly a couple days later, might they not see that or have enough time to prepare to show up to that meeting? Is there any chance to, we have a meeting the 4th and the 18th. That's it in January, of course.
Right.
I'm assuming, High's moving quickly with the project. They're trying to get input as quick as possible. Is that, the question that I'm trying to get at, sorry, is, is there any way either to get the survey and the newsletter out sooner? I know that would be difficult, or, move the, where we actually discuss this to the February board meeting, so there's enough time.
The newsletter, getting the newsletter out a little early, we could try to do that. You're right that it does present some challenges. We were going to have this up on the website as well. So,
Yeah.
That would be, an opportunity there, but I don't know how much of the right contacts we'd have in that
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
So, your only meeting in February is the first Monday in February. I think it's February 1st.
Okay.
You don't have a second meeting in February because of the President's Day holiday.
Right.
Is the third Monday. So if you'd prefer to push it off to that meeting, I think that's possible. We'd have to talk with folks from High. They've been
Right.
aiming at the 18th at this point. But,
Right.
giving them additional time might not be a bad thing. It would just be schedule issues potentially. But,
Yeah. And the only other thought would be and this would be added cost, which I'm really not for either, is, sending postcards out to those, 100 or so, it's probably not even 100, maybe it is, the properties sort of around that area, that, you might be able to get out quicker than the newsletter, just so.
My recollection is that last year, before there was a similar presentation
Mhm.
done, I think it was in November of 19.
Right.
And I think we did send out something specific
Yeah.
to
Right.
certain of the addresses in that
Right.
area.
Right.
So sure, we could we could do that again.
I mean, I'm fine with the February date. I guess here's my thought, and any other comments, please. I just, whatever we can feasibly do that gives the public as much notice as possible. So I'm fine if you move it to February. I'm fine if you keep it January 18th, but if you keep it January 18th, it's got to be in, the website's fine, but it's got to be, in some sort of postcard or something, first week of January, to give people 2 weeks notice. Because I know if I would, frankly, nothing against USPS lately, but I'm getting mail once in a while these days. So, I mean, I could imagine getting this in my mail on Monday and then saying, wait, it's tonight, and then being pissed. So however, again, I'm fine February, I'm fine January, but we have to get it out sooner or just push it back.
I agree.
Thoughts? Yeah. Okay.
Postcards are great. They're also cheap.
Yeah. Okay. Hutch, you had a resolution too.
Yes, I'm sorry, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
We just received today information from High's consultant regarding the 2 traffic signals that are planned as part of this project. The one would be at the intersection of Walnut Street and the westbound Route 30 ramps, and the other one would be at the intersection of Ben Franklin Boulevard and Greenfield Road. The township would, as is the case with all traffic signals, if it's in your municipality, the municipality owns and operates it. So PennDOT requires that municipalities that want to have those traffic signals make application for them, and we do that by resolution. So the consultants asked if the board would consider adopting a resolution, one resolution for each. So you'd have to take 2 actions to adopt 2 resolutions to cover those 2 locations, which would indicate that the township would be accepting responsibility for those once they are installed.
We call it resolution 1 and resolution 2. What was the first? It's Walnut Street Extension westbound ramps. Is that one of one?
Route 30 westbound ramps.
Route 30 westbound ramps. And then the second one is for Greenfield and Ben Franklin.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
I'll make a motion that we adopt a resolution authorizing application to PennDOT for the traffic lights at the westbound ramps of Route 30 and Walnut Street.
Sounds good. Okay. Motion
Second.
made. Second by Glenn. Any comments from the board? Any comments from the public? Okay. Motion, Glenn,
Aye.
Ethan,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
aye. Okay.
Make a motion that we adopt a resolution authorizing application to PennDOT for traffic signals at Ben Franklin and Greenfield Road.
Excellent. Okay.
Second.
Second by Glenn. Okay. Any comments from the board? Any comments from the public? Glenn,
Aye.
Ethan,
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Resolution passes. Thank you. Any other comments from manager's report?
Not at this time.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? Okay. Accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Glenn, second by Ethan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Motion passes. Thank you. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Yep.
Thanks. You too.
Thanks. Merry Christmas.